Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Snow Patrol, The Forest is the Path. Okay, the last time I talked about Snow Patrol was back in 2018, and the fact that I didn't initially remember reviewing Wildness, not a good sign. But it really had me thinking, what were Snow Patrol's strengths as a band going into this album? Gary Lightbody's aching sincerity with just enough emotional depth in some of the lyrical details, a surprising amount of melodic complexity of which they rarely got credit, and just enough grit and heaviness to give their grooves some actual muscle. If all you know of Snow Patrol are some of the crossover adult alternative ballads like Run and Chasing Cars, you're missing out. Unfortunately, the 2010s weren't exactly kind to them. The albums were really uneven, the electronic flourishes really did not work. I don't think Jackknife Lee ever really helped them as a producer. Lightbody was pushing his voice outside of his flattering ranges, especially that falsetto, and the general collapse of adult alternative as a radio format left the band without much of a home. So I had no clue what to expect with this upcoming album, especially with the departure of both their bassist and longtime drummer, which had some folks thinking the band was done, and then bringing in Fraser T. Smith on production. And thus, I'm absolutely stunned to hear that Snow Patrol is not only back to form, but with the sort of record that feels like the natural continuation of their run in the 2000s, and by that I mean the sort of project that feels apropos and consistent for their sound should they have released it maybe a decade ago. And it doesn't make it sound dated, if anything it's even better. And a big part of that I am placing on production, and a comparison to the 2010s output is valuable, where Gary Lightbody admitted that he was going through writer's block putting both those albums together, and in retrospect, yeah, you can really tell. The creative vision was inconsistent in the execution that gave Jackknife Lee less to work with as a fit that's never quite gelled or just got worse, and thus when they went back to the formula, it kind of felt mawkish, under-inspired. Now, Fraser T. Smith is a more natural fit in terms of the larger expanse of Snow Patrol's sound, ensuring the grooves have some tangible power, even if I think the guitar texture could have afforded a little bit more sizzle, and when there are electronic elements or percussion included, they're never to overpower Lightbody's singing or cluttering up the mix. It's all in service of the melody, especially with songs like the gleaming but darker shift on Years That Fall. And Lightbody himself is actually in a more comfortable vocal range. Initially, I kinda balked a bit with the roughness in his voice on the hook of All, and look, I don't like his falsetto, especially on that closing title track, but as he settles into his natural register, he became that evocative, emotionally charged presence that made those 2000s albums so compelling, and more importantly, while the yearning love songs are here, like the absolutely stellar crescendo of Everything's Here and Nothing's Lost, that it reminds me a lot of The National in the best ways possible, there is actually a heavier darkness that's underscoring a significant chunk of this project, that when you hear that Lightbody admitting in interviews that he hasn't been in love for over a decade, well, yeah, it makes sense, you can hear it on the album. But it also changes the framing and the context of these scenes, where Gary Lightbody has explained thematically, this project is exploring how we perceive and move through time, which he describes as non-linear, either through the juxtaposition of so many moments in echoing progression that can feel compressed together, or how we perceive relationships in time, creating both a sense of distance and scale to the relationships, but also white-hot, tight moments of shining intimacy and angst, both from without on the beginning, where after being burned so many times in cyclical, love-struck relationships, he just yearns for the passion to be in love without even being loved in return, recapture that thrill as the drums echo around that brighter guitar lead playing off the strings, but then into a run of songs full of tempestuous moments that are trying so hard to keep that passionate spark alive, where he would rather find conflict than creeping numbness. Hold Me in the Fire is just an incredible example, as the acoustic guitars gallop across some major melodic shifts, damn near prog rock. It almost feels appropriate for Your Heart Home as well. Moreover, where previous Snow Patrol albums can get a little cloying. Lightbody's framing is also not sparing himself in these moments either. The regret of years that fall, where he feels that time compress in a rush of memories. The flip side to the brighter yearning of This Is the Sound of Your Voice, with the softer growls of guitar and some of that heavier percussion, and that kind of bombast does remind me of the early to mid 2010s. But then you have the shocking, brooding venom of Never Really Tire, capturing a fight that goes too far in a flurry of moments full of distant, discordant flickers as the drums rank up that sense of roiling dread. Then there's the attempt to reconcile with an ex, where he still can't quite be honest about how strongly he felt on These Lies. I like that the one piano ballad on this album is trying so desperately to preserve his ego instead of a deeper profession of actual love. Nice little switch up there. And then that swings around to the failed communications of What If Nothing Breaks, where the question of whether it can even work after years accentuated in the reverb, it's left heartbreakingly ambiguous, as you can tell that folks just didn't say enough or talk past each other. But that is the risk of love. Even if I don't love the musical execution of the title track with the fizzy synths and the falsetto, the thesis of the risk to keep trying for love and passion as that answer that can stick and resonate across time, the passion for which life is worth living. I mean, for Gary Lightbody's still clinging to that despite decades of self-admitted failure, it's an emotional payoff that feels very earned. And in short, okay, look, I'm willing to accept that some of this is off of my nostalgia and the thrill of Snow Patrol recapturing the magic, as it's felt like damn near 15 years, and that's coming from someone who likes 100 Million Suns a lot more than most. But between the evolution in the production, the thematic richness that actually supports a terrific run of deep cuts that used to be central to Snow Patrol's appeal, why they were so underrated by only those who knew the singles, and also a melodic diversity and heaviness that their contemporaries largely abandoned in the 2010s, glaring straight at Coldplay here. Snow Patrol might be years away from their relevance, but they recaptured the passion with an album that can contend, I'd say, with their best. A total surprise for me, legit excellent. You probably had no reason to check this out, even if you were fans that have long been let down. Well, now you got a reason. They're back. This is great. Worth a proper shot. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. Again, I was totally floored about this from Snow Patrol. I'm curious how the fans take this in, because I really love this. This is excellent. Beyond that though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you all want to help support the channel, well, again, I've got my Patreon, that's going as it is. I put up a recent video describing some of the issues I've had with that. Please be sure to check that out. But also, if you want something new that's coming up on this channel, hopefully this Thursday, I got a live streaming show that I'm going to be attempting to work with. It's called a Bandwidth. And again, it's also expressed in that video, so that has led me to open up YouTube memberships. If y'all want to get involved in that opportunity, well, there it is. I'd be very grateful for your support. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.